Okay, so here we are at Why Notes, Why Now, and How. This is class 5 of 5. Um, we've done a lot of things, all of these things, and hopefully we've made a lot of progress there. I do apologize, I'm a little bit late getting some of the replays up. I'm going to catch up on that over the holiday weekend, in the business of hiring someone to help me because it's just gotten so wonderfully crazy. So anyway, last time we didn't quite get through some calculator practice that I wanted to go over with you. So we're going to finish up the last 2 slides from last week's presentation. And then tonight we're going to go over the step-by-step paperwork trail with downloadable documents to buy a note. We're also going to finish up with comments on the SAFE Act and how it affects my business and things for you to think about and when you're contemplating your business. Okay, so going back, any questions, please just pipe up with the little chat button, okay? This is a mobile home in a 5-star park, and I'm just as an FYI, mobile homes are a lot riskier, in my opinion, for the most part, than stick builts. I mean, I know there's always exceptions, but mobile homes are always considered to be quite a bit more risky. You have to be a lot more careful. The type of park it's in is important. The age of the mobile home is important. The park rules and space rent is important. There's a lot of things that are different, and they don't have usually they're governed by a different regulatory body. You don't really have a note and deed or a note and mortgage. You usually sort of like a DMV kind of thing where you have title to this mobile house like a car. So it's a little bit different of a process, but the some of the ideas are the same. So this is actually what I'm doing right now. We're getting very, very close to the closing date. This is a guy who bought a mobile home. He grew up in a mobile home park and knew because his grandmother was the owner manager of a mobile home, so he was very familiar with them from childhood. So now that he's a young man, I think he's in his mid to late 20s. He's very bright, very aggressive. I like this guy. I met him at an investment club, and I went out to check out his work. He went to this mobile home park who had this property that wasn't performing, right? It wasn't giving them a land lease. That's how they make their money, is those mobile home parks. They just want their land lease for the most part. So he got this property, this mobile home, for $5,000. He put $1,000 in it, so now he's into it $6,000. Then he turned around and sold it for $30,000 with owner Carrie. He took a $6,000 down payment, which is 20%. It's decent. I kind of like to see more, actually, with mobile homes, but I can work with this. The first note then was $24,000. The interest rate was 15%, and that's pretty common. Interest rates for mobile homes tend to be in the 12 to 15% range. And this was a 72-year term, so this is fully amortized over 6 years. They've already made 3 payments. The payment's $507.48 a month. I want my max ITV, investment to value, to be 50% or less. So the most I can pay is $15,000. And I'm looking for a yield based on the risk of about 25%. And there, I got a question here. Do you have seller financing legal form on your site? This is actually kind of an interesting question. Seller financing legal forms. It's just like people, there's not really a typical seller financing form. It's depending on what's in your state. Now, notes are pretty much, for stick builts, regular real estate notes are pretty much the same from state to state, but deeds of trust can have bits of differences. And so everyone always wants me to say, just give me the form that I can do all my seller financing deals with. And I just am not able to do that because there's a lot of times when people are hiring me to help them with their seller finance deal, then I'm coordinating if it's not in California, then I'm coordinating with other professionals in their state to make sure that we've got all the boilerplate documents and the standard clauses and requirements that are pertinent to that state. So it's kind of impossible for me to do a standard seller financing. If you have a more specific question, like a contract for seller financing, I know there's tons of just real estate contracts. You can even find realtor forms online probably, but I can't like ever just sell a seller financing sort of template that just safely fits everywhere. I just don't feel comfortable with that. So you guys know I'm kind of on the conservative side. So I give you some basic guidelines, and then if you hire me, I help you coordinate with all the people that you need in your state. California, obviously, I can do. So now I just want to kind of bring up the calculator practice because I want you guys to see. All right, so this is how we figured out. Let's clear all. Okay, this is on our HB10B2. Purchase price. Okay, sales price was 30,000. They took 6,000 down. So we have our first note and deed of trust at 24,000. That's our PV, our present value. It was a 15% interest rate right there. It was fully amortized over 6 years, so that's 72 months, right? 6 times 12 is 72. And then to calculate payment, we see that it's 507.42. I know the most I can pay is 15,000. Okay, and so then I see, what kind of a yield that is. Oh, Jesus. If he sold me the whole note, I'd be making 36% on my money. But, I didn't want to chop him off, that much. So what I did is I said, look, I'll just buy 47 payments and you can keep the last 22. So I put 47 in here to my term, which is N. And now I get my 25% for, that's pretty fair. For 50% ITV, to me, based on the collateral, I saw the work being done. I saw it with my own eyes. I trust the guy. I like him. My gut says go on this. So I'm doing it. Okay, now, so if I just buy a partial, right? We talked about that last time, and I do promise I'll get the partial contracts up as well in accordance when I get the replays up from last week. So never fear. But the balance will be, so we know let's go back here. There's 72 payments overall. We know there's already 3 been made. So now we know, now we're going to go 72 minus 3 equals, there's 69 payments left, and I'm only going to buy 47 of them. So minus, did I say minus already? Minus 47. Darn it. 72 minus 3 minus 47 equals, okay, that leaves 22 payments left, okay, for him on the back end. So if I put in that 22,000 and put in this 15% yield back where it was, the face value of the note, we have the payment amount, which I didn't change, 507, right? So now I just push PV to figure out what the present value of that is. I mean, I know it's not to be received for 4 years, but just to get this number of what's the balance when he gets it back. So after he gets it back, after the 3 that have already been received plus the 47 I'm going to buy, he's still going to have a note balance of 9,708. The note seller gets his 6,000 down payment. He'll get 15,000 from me, plus in 4 years he'll still have a balance of 9,708, which is 22 payments of 507 each for 11,165. So his total is like in the 43,000 range for a property he sold for 30,000. So if you count that, I mean, he's getting 37,000 for his $24,000 note. Well, I don't know how I got actually. That probably doesn't really make a lot of sense. But anyhow, he's getting more than the balance of his note, quite a bit more. But here's the thing, he doesn't want to wait. Actually, cash now is much more valuable to him than cash later, because he has a lot of other mobile homes he can flip if he's got the cash and the liquidity. So he goes, "Can't you just buy the whole note?" And I go, my ITVs, I really hate getting higher than 50%, especially on a mobile home, especially there was only a 20% down payment. But there's other strengths in the deal. It's a very solid retirement community where the resale value should be pretty good. I know that if there's anything that goes wrong, that we can that the managers will not charge us lease space. They'll suspend it because of my relationship, because of the note seller's relationship with them, and I'll rope him in to be on my team. So I stretch up to 17.5 and I buy all of them. So 69, and then my yield jumped up to 27.52. And I realized that this is kind of whacking off his profit, and that he's just thinking, oh my gosh, if they default, then you're going to get, it's not apparently, he's done it multiple times because of working with his grandmother in their parks. They can get people out in 30 to 45 days when they don't pay. So he's going, gosh, you'll only have put in 17,000 and then you'll get this property back that's worth 30,000. And I took this big discount and I said, look, here's what we're going to do, Chris. In the note, I'll make that if there's any default, that you're going to handle it because you know how to deal with these things. You've been doing it your whole life. You have the relationship with the park. They will work with you. They'll waive space rent for you because of the relationship you've established. So here's what I'm going to do. If you'll handle it, I'll give you all the upside. So if there's a default and you sell it again for 30,000, I'm not going to ask for any of that. I'm going to let you keep it. All you got to do is keep me whole and guarantee my yield. So if you get 30,000 again, you can pocket your 10 or 12 or whatever it would be to make the numbers work. So he was really, really happy with that. So I really like to align everybody with my best interest because it keeps my life simple, and I want everybody to win. I don't really want anyone to feel like they got, taken advantage of. So let's go over here. Back to our show. So here's extra things if I'm doing a mobile home deal. Make sure the park is okay with mortgages and or renting the mobile home out. I like to know that there's a lot of flexibility. Some parks won't let anyone who doesn't own their mobile home free and clear, and some will not let you lease or rent out a mobile home in their park. They're only owner occupants, so you need to know that kind of stuff. Like I said, the purchase contract says that the note seller will be responsible to handle any default and get the owner out. And in exchange, I give him all the upside that he's worked hard for. I'll use his relationship with the park owner manager to waive space rent while the note's non-performing, if it ever does get to that point. Like I said, in exchange, I leave him any and all the upside after my note is brought current and my yield is protected. So if it resells for even just for 25,000, and he gets a 30% down payment of 7,500, the new note would be 17.5 at 15% over maybe 4 years, right? So 487 would be my monthly payment, and I want to keep my 27.5% yield, so I've got to have 14,085, and that leaves him. Here's what he's going to walk away with, even if he has to subsidize my yield. Okay, he's going to still have over $4,000 just in his pocket. Okay, and then I'll keep that in place so that if it happens again, he can make a profit again. So this makes it not so hard for him to walk away with his discount. Okay, now in order to talk about the whole paper trail, I thought it would just be most efficient to just take you along on a journey that actually I've been working on just in the last 2 business days, Friday and today, and then just create templates for you from that. It's very present, very immediate. This is a guy who's in '06 or 5 years ago. He bought a property that he was going to rehab himself, but because he's been a mortgage banker most of his life, a lot of his life, he's also a general contractor and he's run lots of crews. But before he started the work, after he got title to this property, somebody came along and said, they were a contractor themselves and he and his wife wanted to move in. And so they did a lease option with a strike price of $79,500 and with the understanding that the owner occupants were going to do all of the rehab that was necessary to bring it up to snuff. In '09, they converted it to a contract for deed, a land contract, $79,500, in exchange for them. And at that time, the property, because of all the work they'd done, the property appraised for $180,000, and they weren't even quite done with everything on the inside, but a lot of it. Okay, so here's what it looked like. The overall down payment when I come to the table looks like $37,000, but here's what it's made up of. It's made up of $6,000 in option money back in '06. He paid another $20,000 in '09 to get the owner to give him a land contract instead of just a lease option. And in order to get the owner to convert it to a note and deed and put him on title, he gave him another $11,000, plus he's done all of the rehab on his own dime. Okay, so there's a ton of sweat equity and money combination. So now the sales price as of October 26th, 2011 was $79,500. Okay, so $79,500 minus the $37,000 in hard equity that he's put in, not even counting all the rehab, right? The first note is $42,500. So isn't this sounding pretty good? I mean, there's a lot of skin in the game, right? The interest rate's 8%. The term, it's amortized fully over 57 months, less than 5 years. That's great. The payment is $898.68. And they're based on this old value, and I've already ordered my own BPO, broker price opinion, because I want to get a opinion of value. But just guessing that even if we just stayed the same in '09, we got a 180 formal appraisal that I have a copy of. My max ITV is 90,000. So if I'm buying the note even if I bought it at face value, I'd be, at 25% ITV. But here's a weird thing. It's tax defaulted. There's the '06, '07, '08, and 2010 taxes are defaulted. No one's been paying them. I said, well, what's that about? And so it's just kind of wonky. Like, it doesn't really fit. So now I'm going, makes me pause. Everything's looking good, 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 good. And then it's like, oh, that's weird. Okay, the other thing is, technically, here's the note. It hasn't even received its first payment. They closed on October 26th when they'd converted to a note and deed. So technically, there's no seasoning on the note. But I'm looking at this really seasoning since '06 from the option money plus the lease payments, then the land contract and installment payments they were making. So there is a lot of seasoning, but not technically for this note. The buyers have poor credit. They had, for whatever reason, they don't have great credit. So it's not really a conversation of determining whether I'm going to do this deal or not. It's more of an asset-based conversation. I looked at the property insurance to see, are we still up in this 180 range? Their policy covers them up to 191. So that's looking good. Like, that's the replacement cost, and that's the value that they're being insured. The named insured are covered up to. They have lots of skin in the game. I love the short amortization. Why? Because every month I'm gaining in protective equity. There's a lot of principal reduction in a short am note. Okay, I like that. Every month my position is stronger and safer, regardless if prices soften up or not. The seller wants money for Christmas, so he's motivated. He's been turned off by other buyers. He says he's been in the mortgage business and the construction and rehab business for 2 or 3 decades. This is the first time he's ever tried to sell a seller carryback note. So he said, I went online and I found 4 brokers or buyers, and I called those 4, and I got somebody that called me back but he was really turned off because they kept promising one thing and then they would do another, and then they actually told him a bald-faced lie. And after that, even though they're offering him more than me, he didn't trust them because they had already said, oh, in 4 days you're going to have your money. And then all of a sudden there's all these, wait, we got to rethink this. So he was like, if you can just do this deal, I'm telling you all the good, bad, and the ugly up front. And I said, well, while I was on the phone with them, I was using my little HB10B2 iPhone app. You can multitask on there, which is really important for everyone to do. Multitask, right? Not really, I'm being facetious. Anyway, so I got it under contract for $2,000 less than this other guy would do because I'll close by the 1st. They want their money. They don't want any more messing around. They trust me. We probably talked for an hour and a half on Thursday, and on Friday I got it under contract, and now we have a relationship. And he has other, note deals and other guys in his real estate investment clubs that he's going to turn on to me because he likes doing business with people who are doing straight up. So I'm just saying that reputation equity goes a long way, and people are willing to even take less if they can trust you and feel good about the transaction and know that you're like the player. You're the one bringing the money to the table. You're not like, oh, let me see who else I can get to buy this note. It's like I'm acting as a principal in this. I like this note. There's extra risk. It's not super clean that I would maybe tell a novice to do, but overall, I mean, look, the ITV has got to be in the less than 20%, even the worst case scenario. So I purchased this note. I've got it under contract for $34,250. That's an 18% yield. I think it's still fair. It still works for him within the guidelines he's looking for. And this 18% I think is fair given the fact that, there's a few weird things like the tax defaulted. So I'm telling this guy he's got to, out of his $34,250, he's got to bring the taxes current. And he goes, well, the buyer said they'd pay for those. I said, good, then you got to work it out with them. You're the one with the relationship. I don't want to buy a note secured by a tax defaulted property. So we worked it out. No credit. I think he has some of the payment history, but he's missing some of the payment history. So all things considered, I think this is pretty fair for the risk reward on both sides. So why do I have this in here? Oh, yeah. Okay, so now we are, we did this a lot last time, okay? So now we know this is how an owner finance deal comes together. And we know now we're going to buy the note. So let's just a quick reminder that we're going to have the note assigned or endorsed to us. And we're also going to take an assignment of the deed of trust. And the note buyer, after we have those things, is going to be making payments to me instead of this rehabber guy that they've had a relationship for the last 5 years. As an aside, they're a little bit nervous because they're saying, why did you have to sell the note? We trust you. What if the note buyer, does something weird and says that we owe them more? And it's like, it's unfortunate because there's reason for people to be scared because some of the institutional people are kind of icky about their practices and all of a sudden can say, oh, even though you think you've been paying, you're now 2 months behind and we're going to start foreclosing, or we're going to raise your interest rate. It's totally illegal, but sometimes they do those tricks. But I'm going to talk to them directly. That's on my list of things to do. We're going to have a phone conversation. So they feel comfortable in making the payments to me and knowing that I'm going to be honorable and honest. I'm going to be mortgagee on the insurance policy. I'm also going to be the assignee to the loan title policy that was there. Okay, so that's how this deal is going to work. All right, so now we're going to, because the SAFE Act comes later, so now I want to go to the documents. And I put them all on my desktop here, which I have a very messy desktop, which is sort of embarrassing, but let's do the first thing. Okay, here's the note. These are, like I said, these are the things that you can download directly from Owner Financing Club. So the first thing, of course, already at this point, I'm already assuming that I've looked over a copy of the note. Okay, I've already looked over the copy of the note, and I've already looked over the security instrument. I've already done maybe a cursory check on ePraisal or Zillow or something, and maybe Google Earth just to make sure the property's still there and hasn't burned down, although those are delayed, as we know. But you know, the story makes sense, so now I got it under contract, and so now I'm going to pull my file together, and I have a note processing checklist. This helps me keep in mind of all the things I'm going to need to do to close this file, and this also makes it easy for me to give it to somebody else if I can say, look, just put this file together, follow up, and so I can spend my time getting the next note under contract instead of lots of hours putting together the paperwork. So what I'll do is over here I'll either put a check mark or I'll put the date at which I received it or completed it or whatever. Okay, so that's what those are for. I got the signed note purchase contract on 11/18. I put NA, non-applicable, here because I don't really need the authorization to release records because this guy is, you know, organized enough. He's been a mortgage banker and a broker, so he has all the documents already that I'm going to need. The original note, okay, I always put that in there. Obviously, I'm only going to get a copy of the note and not the original note until I get the closing package. Got a question here? Oh, BPO. Sorry about that, Wayne. The BPO is a broker price opinion. It's paying a real estate broker to do comps for you. Like banks do this all the time when they're trying to figure out what short sales and REOs are worth. So when I'm buying a note, I can either get an appraisal, but just to let you know, appraisals on this same property, I called the guy back that did the 2009. I said, what would you charge me to do a drive-by and update the appraisal you did 2 years ago? And he said $250. And I said, okay, let me call you back. Anyway, I just went with my online BPO, which is having a real estate agent basically do the same thing, but for $95 instead of $250. So, I mean, sometimes you want appraisals and it's worth it. Other times my loan to value or my investment to value is so low on this deal that I just need to know it's still standing and that all it's got to do is be above $100,000 realistically, and this is still a reasonable deal. There's still plenty of security. And just as a reminder, I actually didn't write it down anywhere on here, but like it's a deed state, it's not a judicial, so deed foreclosure, getting to a trustee sale is going to be a lot less complicated and less time, cost me less time than a mortgage state. So I like it because it's in a deed state and it's not hard to foreclose in North Carolina. Okay, I want the security instrument, a deed of trust. You need to have a recorded copy. You need one that has that little stamp that shows you what book, map, and page, or the instrument number, and what date it was recorded in the county. You need that to put together your assignment. The HUD one, which is the settlement statement, you want to see all the numbers on both the seller's and the buyer's side. You want the consent to pull consumer reports. So even though I'm not going to pull credit on the buyers and the payers right now because I already know it's not good and that's not what this deal is hinging on, I'm going to have them fill it out because I'm going to get their social security numbers, their phone numbers, and if I ever want to pull their credit, I'll have the right to do it, and that's in one of our other documents that you'll see. Then I'll say, okay, I got the credit report back. If I did order it, here's the scores. I put them in there. Here's I said this is the date, and if I just ordered it today, 11/21, BPO appraisal ordered. The company was used to be called BPO's Online. Now it's called Ever. I wonder if I still have it up. Actually, I don't have it up, but it's called evrnow.com. I just use them. I don't know why. Okay, I'm sure there's others that are okay, but this is just who I use. It's called evalueresource.com. It used to be bposonline.com. Okay, you go here, you place an order. Really pretty quick and easy. I usually get it back within 5 to 7 days, not even business days, 5 to 7 days. So that's really valuable. Okay, then I put in, the date I got it back and what the value was. I determined whether or not I'm going to need interior photos. And this one I said non-applicable. I'm going to want a verified payment history. He still needs to get me that. I want to see the lender's title policy. He does have an Alta loan policy. I am not going to need it formally assigned to me because on his policy, the language just says that it's already applicable to the whoever's has an assigned interest in the property. So I'm already covered. I'll just want like a copy of the original policy instead of just like an emailed version or a faxed version. Okay. Insurance declaration page and policy with adequate coverage. Remember, I showed you, I already looked at that. It was 191 and had, everything that it needed. Before I close, I need to see the insurance certificate showing me as the mortgagee, lost payee, whatever's, with that company, how they put that. I'm going to want an offset statement signed by the payer. This is the person making the payments. I'm going to want them to say, hey, this whole deal's good. Yes, I owe this much, and we'll talk about that in a second. I'm also going to, most of the time, I want to talk to them. I want them to know I'm a real person. I want to know they're a real person. I also want to get an intuitive read on these people. Okay? And I don't want them to be scared either. I want them to feel comfortable. It's my whole dedication to a community type of feeling and way of doing business where we're getting away from the corporate institutional BS and we're just doing neighbor to neighbor kind of deals. Okay. Here's their name. Here's their phone number. Then I have a little thing. Did I send funding instructions, the purchase contracts, and the assignment of deed to the closing agent? And we're going to go over all those. And then I want to know, did I receive the letter of protection back from them after I sent them that? Because I'm not going to fund until they tell me that they got my funding instructions and they're going to honor them and they understand them. Okay? And I need to have the wiring instructions for the closing agent. Sometimes it's escrow companies. A lot of times it's title companies. A lot of times it's attorneys. Okay? In this particular case, it's an attorney. Okay, so I put the attorney's name there, his paralegal's name, their phone number, the email contact, and then just for reference, so when I put it in my file on the left inside flap, just for quick reference, I have all the phone numbers that I'm going to need, note seller's name and phone number. And then I write in other stuff that you need that you don't need on every deal, but that's particular to your one thing. Okay, so that's the note process. Now let's go down here. I want to just show you of course, you're not even going to open escrow until you get a note under contract, right? Okay, so this is a standard sort of, now this is 2 pages and this is fine. And in fact, you can do real estate deals and note deals on a napkin, whatever you can. And everyone signs it, and then you get it into a closing agent that gets instructions printed up that everyone signs. But this is 2 pages. I've seen note purchase contracts that are 14 pages. So just to let you know, there's everything from a napkin to 14 pages of legalese. This is just what I use. So far, it's okay. I don't have a reason, to be more complicated. Just quickly, I don't know if it's easy to see. This is the date between yada yada, the seller, and me, the purchaser, and or is successors and assigns. This gives me the right to assign the contract to somebody else or flip it to someone for a fee. I these days rarely do that. I'm mostly buying for my own account, and often using other people's funds. They'll loan me the money to buy it, and we both make money that way with my elbow grease in it all the time. I think this is all very self-explanatory. I specify exactly what the note is and what the balance is as of what payment, and when the final payment is, the agreed purchase price, $34,250, provided there's no underlying problems discovered during the due diligence period. Due diligence starts the day after, sometimes the day of, but once I get a signed contract, then I get real busy and I'll start looking at things. And I always put the contract price includes the December payment. So we're really close right here at when we did this contract. I didn't get back till the 18th, but I wrote this up on the 16th. And that's really close. It's probably that December payment is already going to be on its way to the note sellers before we close escrow. So I'm just going to say, and you'll see how I've accounted for that with the funding instructions, but I just want to make a point that I'm buying the December payment. So we're closing on December 1 probably, if we can, or as close to that as we can. But I get that payment. That payment's mine. Otherwise, I would decrease my price. Okay, so that's significant to put in there so everyone knows. Closing of this transaction to be honored before December 1st. I'm giving myself a 7-day due diligence period. In reality, I've already done a lot. I'm basically waiting on that BPO, that broker price opinion, to come back. The rest I can pretty much do on my own, or I need the note seller to provide for me. And he's working on that. But, it's Thanksgiving. So we're probably not going to hit the ground running until after Thanksgiving weekend. I say, who's going to pay closing costs? I say, hey, people really get real estate transactions. They get their closing costs on the seller side, so that's how I've framed this. Seller's got to pay the Alta loan policy if it wasn't purchased with the original transfer of the property. They're going to pay all the closing fees. My quote doesn't cover closing fees because the closing fees can vary dramatically depending on what the note seller's going to want, so I make it their gig to pay for it. Okay, the purchaser, which is me, I'm not going to have any closing costs, except I will pay for the cost of recording the assignment of deed of trust or mortgage. Rarely I'll buy a mortgage. The appraisal and the credit check. That's what I'll pay for. And in this thing, I added seller agrees to pay all defaulted tax amount out of proceeds of note sale. That gives me a clean start. The clock doesn't start ticking. Blah, blah, blah. Signing. Okay, got a question? Wayne is saying, are you doing the due diligence yourself or have someone else do it? Well, besides ordering the broker price opinion from a local agent who can actually drive to the property and take photos, I'm doing it all myself. Okay, I don't know. At some point, I may. And no, I probably will. I'm too much of a control freak. I'll probably always need to do. Probably need to do it myself. Okay, because I just need to be sure. Especially when I'm bringing in other people's money to help me do a note, I don't leave any T's uncrossed or I's undotted. You just can't afford to take it. Even when you're pretty sure, you always just back it up with hard stuff in the file. That's my opinion, anyway. Okay, that's the purchase agreement. And then, this I'm just going to bring up super quickly because this is in another blog post, so you might have already seen it. But when I'm looking at the copy of the note before I even got under contract, these are things that I just look for that makes a note legally binding, and there's nothing weird about it that might compromise its negotiability, whether it's a negotiable instrument or not. Okay, so I just put it on this post again, just so it's there. It seems like it makes sense to have it there. Okay, so now, remember one of the things that I was needing with my that little note check. This is the authorization to receive consumer reports. This allows me to pull the buyer's, borrower's, payer's credit score. Okay, and like I said, I'm not going to do it, but I still want this for my file. The note holder has to fill this out. Here's the payer's information, their name, their address, their social, and their phone number. Okay, this is something I'm going to need for my file. The other thing, like I said, I don't need it in this situation, but sometimes if I have a note seller that's not very, let's say, sophisticated or something, and they don't know where all their paperwork is and they're confused, then I just have them sign this authorization that will allow me to talk to the title company, the escrow company, the attorney, the insurance company that on their behalf. Okay, so this is just something that makes me help them with the due diligence that they should be able to do, but sometimes aren't able to do. The other thing, we got the processing check. This, the purchase agreement. Okay, the other thing besides that authorization for consumer reports, okay, the things, like I said, this authorization for consumer reports I need back. I've sent this to the note holder. They need to get that back to me. They also need to get the payment history to me, and they also need to get me this offset statement. Okay, this just means that sometimes you can have offsets, like there's some maybe verbal arrangement or agreement between the original buyer and seller that says, look, if you ever have to like replace the roof, then you don't have to pay me, on the mortgage. Or if you do this, you're going to get an automatic reduction in your payment or interest rate. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you want to make sure that the payer is on board with what the seller is saying the note is. So this first section is to be completed out by the beneficiary, who is the note holder, the note seller, right? The guy who carried back paper. And he's saying, okay, Mr. Owners, I'm holding a note, blah, 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 secured by a deed that was recorded on this date as instrument number in this county, encumbering property you own. Here's the regular address. Please confirm whether the information in this statement conforms with your records. Okay? Until further notification, continue making payments as you have in the past. Note holder signs and dates. So then when the the note payer, the borrower, sends it back, they have to do this part. And it's basically saying, yes, we agree. If there's any changes, they cross them out and write the new things. The note secured by the deed of trust on our home is valid. Yes, we owe $42.5. Yes, our monthly payment is $898.68. Yes, our next payment is December 1st. Our last one is August 1st, 2016. The original payee of the note received full and valid consideration. I understand the note's being sold and assigned. Okay, so this just makes sure nobody's going to get blindsided and go weird on the deal. Okay, so I'm waiting for this to come back. Okay, then we come to funding instructions. So now, this is an important piece that actually I didn't learn for a few years, even after all the courses that I bought starting back in the 90s and things. So this is sort of a collaboration I've put together from when once I started learning how to do private loan originations, like hard money loans in LA, then I started going, hey, these funding instructions are, exactly what we need for the note buying thing. So anyway, basically, here's my contact information. These are all in document form, so you can, hopefully they're editable. I know some people have different versions of Word, so you'll have to let me know if you have any problems whatsoever. But you can just substitute all your own information here. Okay, so now I know the guy that closed the deal, the attorney that closed the transaction between the buyer and seller, October 26th of this year, I'm just going to go back to him because he already has the file, the paperwork, he gets the deal. It's just easier that way, okay? And unless he's going to be a jerk, or I don't trust him, or he's charging way too much for the note seller to swallow, then we're going to go back to him to have the assignment of the deed. Makes it super, super simple. And of course, all these are changed, so don't try to find this exact one, but I've changed the names to protect the innocent, or not so much, I don't know. Okay, I'm just saying, Chicago, here's the attorney that was closing, here's the title company that wrote up the Alta policy. So sometimes, I don't know, I put in both because sometimes you're wiring funds to the title company, sometimes you're wiring them to the attorney's trust account. Okay, so here is my basic thing. This is just saying, once I send you money, here's what you better do with it, or you're in big, big trouble. Okay, Note Investor Tandem Inc., that's one entity under which I buy some notes, will deposit 33,376.32 in your designated trust account per wiring instruction to be provided by you, dispersed by you, and or Chicago Title in connection with this file up here. This is saying you are instructed to give the money out to the note holder in accordance with the terms and conditions of the agreement. Remember the note purchase contract? Along with this funding instructions, I'm going to send him the copy of the fully executed purchase contract between myself and the note seller. Okay, that's dated this date, a copy of which is attached here too. And you can give the money when the note investor, whose address is blah, 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 put your address here, has acknowledged in writing satisfactory receipts of emailed copies of, I want to see that the original note was properly endorsed to me. So even though I won't get the original till after the closing, maybe within a week after the closing, hopefully they'll FedEx and it'll be 1 or 2 days. But I want to at least see a copy of it. But I want them to have to do everything in writing, not like take something verbal on the phone. It's just better. Everything has to be in writing. Also, I'm going to want to see that the note holder has fully executed and notarized the assignment of deed of trust. And I want, they have to give me a satisfactory copy of the Alta loan policy. And that policy has to show the property free from liens or encumbrances, except taxes and stuff that aren't even really due yet. Any CCRs, right? Regular stuff. And the only thing that should be on there is a first deed of trust in favor of the seller note holder. Okay, if there's anything else, that's why this attorney's got to go and pay those back taxes before he can get me an updated title commitment, right? Also, the note investor has acknowledged me. I've acknowledged that I've received satisfactory evidence of coverage with insurance, and I'm the lost payee, right? The mortgagee. So then the next thing is, from the gross funds that I deposit, the note holder is to pay all defaulted tax amounts, escrow title, document preparation, and all other costs associated with this transaction, and the net note proceeds are to be dispersed according to the agreement and any other instructions consistent herewith. Note investor shall have no cost or expense except for the recording of the assignment of deed of trust in blah, blah, blah county. So then I'm get really specific. From the gross funds deposited by my company, the attorney will credit to the seller this much money, less closing costs. This is the amount I'm going to wire, and defaulted tax amounts. From the contract price, remember I'm buying it for $34,250, but we're so close to that 12/1 payment that I'm just going to deduct it from note proceeds, and I'm going to let the note seller collect it, right? So $34,250 minus the December 1 payment, which I've purchased, is withheld, as note holder is to collect the December 1st payment directly from the borrower/payer. Then I added in $25 for the recording of the assignment of deed, which will all provide it. I don't need the attorney to provide me an assignment of deed of trust, so I'll give him that document, which Actually, I don't think I showed you that one, so I'll pull that one up. Any amounts unused are to be made payable and sent back to me. Usually, recordings only cost 10 or 15 bucks, somewhere in that range, so probably I'll get 10 or 15 dollars back from this 25 bucks. Here's an important thing. Prior to note investor wiring funds, meaning I'm not wiring funds until Mr. Attorney provides me with a letter of protection. Basically, it just means that attorney or that closing agent gives me a letter and he signs it stating that the gross proceeds will not be dispersed until all conditions outlined in this document are fulfilled, all necessary documents are in order and fully executed by the note holder, and that all original documents shall be mailed to the note investor at close to be received no later than December 9th. I'm giving them a week after closing to get me all the original documents in my possession. Okay, you want this because if you send them the funding instructions, unless you have them verify that they get it, they understand it, and they'll honor it, then you don't know if they even saw them. Okay, because actually I had one deal where we wired over the money, and they were just so airheaded. They just gave the seller the money, and we hadn't even completed not even half of the completed documents, and so they could have gotten sued big time. So they retracted that payment super fast. Really fast. Okay, so you just want that in your protection. Got a question. Okay, another question from Wayne. How long does the purchase process normally take? That's a really good question, and it's the same as if you were to ask how long does it take to close a real estate transaction. It totally depends. Usually, I tell people 30 days, just so that I can under promise and over deliver. Depending, sometimes it does take 30 days. Sometimes there's a lot of things to coordinate, a lot of due diligence, a lot of messes to clean up, but in this case, you can see that I didn't get the signed contract back until Friday, and we're going to close pretty close to the 1st. Because of the holiday, it might be the 2nd, but that's what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks all told. It can happen even faster than that. Sometimes it can happen, within just a few days if all the paperwork's lined up, or it can take even longer. I had one deal that took, how long did it take? I think we started working on it, I don't know. The whole thing probably took 3 months because of just a bunch of problems that were very complicated, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then we needed to convert this document, and then the appraisal didn't come through, and then we had to get another one, and then we had to talk. Anyway, that was a deal that I was actually brokering to someone else. This was not something I bought myself or with an investor. So that one took a really, really long time. The answer to the question is it totally depends. Okay, I wanted to show you the assignment of the deed of trust that I use, and also Doc Magic. If you've heard of that, they can also provide you state compliant documentation for real estate transaction, financial transactions. But this is the assignment of the deed of trust. I'm going to enlarge it just a little bit bigger. It's really simple, 1 page. The attorney's going to have to fill in a little bit of stuff for me, but here is, after recording, I want it sent back to me because I want the original recorded document. It's going to have that little stamp up here that says the book, map, page, whatever, instrument number, and the date it was recorded in what county, okay? For value received, the undersigned hereby grants, assigns, and transfers to Tandem Inc. all beneficial interest under that certain deed of trust dated October 26th. Remember how I told you need to have not just a copy of the deed of trust, you need the recorded copy. Most of the time, they'll first just send you oh, this is the one we signed, but I want the recorded version, okay? Because you get all the important stuff you need for the assignment here. The note payer and the wife, the Frank Wesson that was the trustee, he was the attorney was also the trustee. A lot of times it's a title company in here. As instrument number, blah, 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 in the official records of, a certain county in North Carolina. Here's where I'm going to have the guy from title just cut and paste this super long legal description that I didn't want to type in all myself. And the note was originally 42,500. They sign it, and then they need to put the notary language in there that's standard for their state. Every state can be a little bit different in the notary language that's customary. So I'm going to have him cut and paste his notary language in here because, deeds get acknowledged or notarized. Notes don't. They just get signed. But this is an assignment of the deed of trust. I need it notarized. Okay. So, gosh, time's going super, super fast. And so, let's see. I wanted to quickly go over the SAFE Act, and we are going to go a little bit over, so sorry about that. But I think it'll give you a little bit of insight if I can remember what I'm doing. What am I doing? Okay, so just for some background, I don't know how many of you know about it or not, so I'm just going to give a brief bird's eye view of it. After the Lehman Brothers and the big banking, housing, and credit crisis of 2008, Congress passed HERA, the Housing and Economic Recovery Act, because we all know that when something goes wrong, we need government to fix it because it's always so much better, right? Which is comprised, this HERA Act is comprised of several significant housing laws that address the dramatic rise in mortgage delinquencies and foreclosures. Heaven forbid it was a matter of, Fed policy or something like that. Anyway, the SAFE Act was one of these laws. So the SAFE Act is kind of tucked into this overall Recovery Act that they felt compelled to put together after the act, just like I won't get into 9/11 or anything, but anyway. Okay, the SAFE Act is the Secure and Fair Enforcement Mortgage Licensing Act of 2008, and it was designed, its purpose ostensibly was to enhance consumer protection and reduce fraud by encouraging states to establish minimum standards for the licensing and registration of licensed mortgage originators, LMOs. Okay, and this is the licensing registry. I kind of forget what that stands for right now, but that's for registry. So this is all the people who are licensed to do consumer residential loans in the country. So it was a licensing thing. So then it was all about, who needs to be licensed? Anyway, then comes along the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act in July of last year, which amended the SAFE Act. So they go, well, that's not good enough, so we're going to do some more stuff. So Dodd-Frank comes along. And then the final, there's a whole bunch of, submit your comments. Here's what we want to do. Submit your comments. And then HUD responded. But the final, this is not right. The final SAFE Act ruling became effective October 2010. Well, that may be true, but I'm going to show you that, in fact, on the most recent final comment is as of June 30th of this year. So I don't know what I meant by that, but I think the one that I put up on the website for you on Owner Financing Club is the most recent final HUD Act. So I suggest that you read it yourself because it's kind of, we always want other people to tell us what everything means and to interpret it for us. And that's fine, but after you read it with your own eyes and your own understanding and see what you make of it. So, when you're going around to see what everybody thinks and what everybody says, first just go to the horse's mouth and read what they've actually put out there. Okay, so download that thing, the SAFE final comment from HUD from my website. Okay, so of July 2011, this year, HUD transferred the SAFE Act to the new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, for administration and enforcement. But these people, they have until January of next year to even define their rules and interpretation. So this is a long time from 2008. It sort of started. Then Dodd-Frank came along and added some things in there. Then they took some things out because of all the comments they got. Um, they put it into October 2010. SAFE Act, was in place. Now HUD's tossing the wand or the baton off to this other bunch of people who are just got created out of Dodd-Frank, and they don't even know what they're doing yet or what they mean. So basically, a few things. Who needs to be licensed? An individual who's engaged in the business of being a loan originator who takes a loan application and negotiate the terms for compensation or gain. An individual who acts as a residential mortgage loan originator, not commercial, residential, with respect to financing that is provided in a commercial context and with some degree of habitualness or reputation. I learned this word, habitualness. So here's the big, to me, they kept, when I was reading over that final commentary, big thing, commercial context, they love these things, and habitualness. Not every individual who may meet the definition of loan originator because they carried back on their property is necessarily subject to the licensing and registration requirements. It's someone who is in the business of being a loan originator and carries on a commercial enterprise for profit, livelihood, and gain. As we said, the purpose was to enhance consumer protections, support anti-fraud measures, create the licensing system. I think it was just a revenue enhancing deal. They got a lot of money through this licensing system. They're trying to ensure that people will be honest, have integrity and knowledge to do their job properly. It's sad when you have to get to the point of trying to regulate and enforce that by some dumb congressional law. Anyway, they try to make everyone demonstrate honesty and competence. So what about seller financing? There was a ton, almost 5,000 comments just about, in the comment period when they were doing the Dodd-Frank stuff. Nobody wants seller financing in there. Very few people. You can read in that final HUD document a lot of the comments that came up with regularity and then what HUD said to them in addressing them. So, an individual selling his or her own residence or vacation property is not engaged in the business of being a loan originator. No habitualness, and I'm quoting this out of this document, no habitualness or commercial context, even though they are financially benefited by the transaction, right? So you can say, well, I do have a commercial context because I am getting more for my property than I would if I sold it for cash. So, but they're saying no, it doesn't apply to you if you're selling your own residence or vacation property. However, this whole habitualist conversation, they refuse to define what that really means. HUD is unable to state how often an individual may undertake such transactions before the requisite habitualness is met. We don't know. How many times a year before you have a habit, habitualness of offering owner financing? I think a lot of the states you're gonna have to check in your state. Okay, some states are just barely enforcing the bare bones of the federal requirements. Other states are getting even tighter and more restrictive in the laws around seller financing. Seller financing does not apply to a seller selling their own home or the home of a family member. A seller selling to it does not, sorry about that. Forgot to turn my cell phone off. Okay, if a seller is selling to a family member, it doesn't apply. But they haven't really defined exactly what family member means. Is it okay if it's your cousin or your sister-in-law or once removed or something like that? We don't know exactly what family member means. A licensed attorney, but there's some question marks there. When you're selling a residential property to an investor, it doesn't apply because the whole point of the thing is to protect consumers, the owner occupants. So if you're selling to someone who this is a non-owner occupied property, it's bought by them for investment purposes, it does not apply. And obviously, when you're selling non-residential property, it only is for residential properties, 1 to 4 units, and mostly only owner-occupied residential properties. I believe that, like in a place like Idaho, though, I think that they've made residential units 1 to 4, no matter who it's being sold to, whether it's an owner-occupant or an investor, the SAFE Act supposedly still applies. So you got to check with your state. Residential mortgage loans are defined to be notes and deeds of trust or mortgages, and other things. Contract for deed, they mention in there. They call them like installment sales in the HUD statement. Lease option or rent to own. It's unclear if these are included. They've done a lot. They've done a good job of making it gray, so everyone's a little bit, weirded out, not knowing exactly what to count on. On a dwelling which is constructed or intended to be constructed a dwelling, so land that's getting ready to be developed into a house could qualify. Mobile homes. And here's the big crazy thing. Technically, even RVs, if they're used as a primary residence, the SAFE Act, Dodd-Frank, all that applies to sellers of RVs. So it's ridiculous. They say, HUD says, if you want to avoid it completely, you should just retain the services of a licensed loan originator, one of those LMOs, and have that individual carry out the functions that constitute engaging in the business of a loan originator. So they say, look, if you're an individual, you think you might be on the border, you're maybe doing a handful of deals a year, or you're just doing one, but you're scared of the SAFE Act and everything else, then just hire an LMO. But it doesn't necessarily translate for builders and rehabbers. There again, you have to go back to your state, because even builders and rehabbers who repeatedly do sell with owner financing, in the course of selling homes they have constructed or bought, that satisfied the requirements of that commercial context and the habitualness or repetition, and accordingly would be subject to the SAFE Act licensing requirements. And it's sounding like that these builders, rehabbers, for them, these ones who are in the business, it's not good enough for them to run it through an LMO, a licensed mortgage originator. They themselves have to be licensed. So check your state. So that's crazy. Additionally, HUD notes that the SAFE Act is designed the minimum requirement for the licensing of individuals, not entities. Now, why they threw that in there, I don't know. Are they trying to create a loophole, like if you're an LLC or a trust or an corporation, does it not apply to you? I mean, there's a lot of gray areas here. So there's our government at work for you. This is something I already talked about. Just other safe harbor guidelines. Truth in lending. Okay, the truth in lending is very important. Actually, I didn't create that as a download, but you can go Google that. Title 14 of the Truth in Lending Act is very integrated into SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank. They like it, HUD likes it, if loans, consumer loans on residential properties, are fully amortizing, including taxes and insurance and assessments. They do not like balloons for owner-occupants. They feel like it sets them up for failure, and in some cases that's true. They don't want to amortize longer than 30 years. They don't like interest-only loans. They like fixed rates. They don't like variable rates. They want you to verify the buyer's ability to pay, their DTI, debt to income ratio. They don't like the points and fees to be over 3%. So, how do I put this all together? Now, let me just show you a quick example, and we're going to be done in less than 5 minutes, so just hang with me. Here's a note that made me nervous because of SAFE Act and Safe Harbor and Truth in Lending guidelines. This is an owner-occupied condo in Atlanta. The sales price, this is an investor, right? A guy who's in the having a commercial context with some degree of habitualness, buying properties and selling with owner financing. Sales price 60,000, big whopping down payment of 2,000. That's only 3.3%. He's being Mr. FHA lender. Good for him. He's got a first note of 58,000, interest rate 7%, amortized over 30 years, so 360, but due in 24. That is a short-term balloon on a consumer loan. Oh my gosh. We think she's going to be ready to refinance. We don't know what interest rates are going to be like. We don't know if the appraisal will come in. Holy cow. So the payment, if you do the calculator, is $385.88. The balloon at the end of 24 months will be $56,779. You can see that in 2 years it only decreased a little low, like $1,200, right? The rest is interest. Already she's made 12 payments. So I know what this investor was thinking. He's going, oh, I know what note investors like, so I'm going to season my note before I try to sell it. So I've done good. I have made a short-term balloon so that it improves the value of my note because of the time value of money, and I've been so patient, and I've waited all this time. I've waited 12 months to season my note. And so now all I got left is 12 months of $385 payments plus the balloon. So he's going, I should get a really big fat price for my note. I've been so good and so smart. I'm going, okay, even if I needed an average 18% yield, and this is kind of high, but I think this is risky. You've got condos. Condos are more risky than homes or other things like that. Because you got HOA, you got other things. You have a freaking small down payment, 3%. That's pathetic. But let's just say I would do this at an 18% yield. That means I'd pay, if I trusted that balloon was really going to come in 12 months from now, I would pay almost $52,000 for this $56,000 note. But guess what? My max ITV is 50%, so the most I can be invested in this note, I don't care what the payer can do or cannot do. Remember how the ultimate payer for your note's the collateral? So if this really is the value of the property, and I would have to do an appraisal or a BPO to make sure it was, the most I can have invested is half of that. I can't be in more than $30,000. So if I bought the whole note for $30,000, I'd have a 77% return. So what if he'd said yes? Okay, I'll sell you the whole note for $30,000 today. Would I still buy it because I'll have a 77% return on my money? No, I won't. And I'm not going to buy a piece of his balloon. Either I'm not going to buy it or I'm going to buy the whole thing. Gets too complicated in my opinion. Other people, may do that, but I don't. But I don't want the balloon. Why don't I want the balloon? I don't want the balloon because, number one, it's violating what HUD likes to see as their safe harbor. You don't do owner-occupied you don't create balloons, short-term balloons for those people. Are you kidding me? I mean, if that ends up in front of a judge, then probably they're going to wipe out the whole thing and just saying, you are being fraudulent. You are actually setting this person up for failure, and shame on you. Your loan's wiped out. So I won't buy a note that was put together this way where they weren't thinking about the SAFE Act and Dodd-Frank and just the safe harbor truth in lending guidelines that we just went over, okay? Also, like I said, with only a 2% down payment, if property values only go down a squeak, if they went even just down, 5%, she's already underwater. She's not going to be able to get a loan. And what if the interest rate were up to 7 or 8 or 12% by then? This is such a time bomb. No, thank you. So all I did is say, I offered to buy the next 12 payments and leave him the balloon. I'd pay him $42.08 for the next 12 payments. And if I still wanted my 18% yield because of the relative risk of the whole thing, that's what that would be. He would get $42.08 plus his balloon in 12 months, and a total of $61,000, just shy of $61,000 for a property he already got $2,000 for. Right now the note balance is $57,000, so he's getting $42,000 now, $56,000 later, $60,000 for basically a note that has a balance of $57,000 right now. So that's It sounds good, but he doesn't want to, right? He's going, no, no, I want to get out of my, I want my profits. I want to, put my money to work with something else. Well, I won't do it. By buying only the partial, I avoid a legal problem. I let the seller deal with the balloon. His brilliant idea of putting a short-term balloon on an owner-occupant with 2,000 down. Come on. I'm going to let him deal with having to restructure or extend the loan or deciding if he's going to foreclose or maybe ending up in court when she takes it to him and says, hey, I don't think the judge is going to like that you did this to me. Okay, so this is the last slide. It's already late, 7:17. Okay, if I'm buying a note secured by a residential property in which there's an owner-occupant, that's their principal residence, here's what I ask myself. I ask myself, how many seller carrybacks does the note seller do in a year and why? Is this one of those things they're in the business of doing it? They have habitualness, they have a habit of doing owner financing? Or is this kind of a one-off deal, or maybe they're just liquidating a handful of notes in an estate? Okay, I want to know, where they're going to fit and what HUD would look, how they would look at them. I also want to check what are the SAFE Act guidelines in that state. If it's kind of questionable, I'll probably research it and find out, how is that state talking about things and interpreting things. I'll want to know, did a LMO, a licensed mortgage originator, arrange the financing? Sometimes this is a plus. Other times I feel it could compromise things because I won't go into that right now. But anyway, I want to know, is there a balloon? That's a biggie. How far out is it? Short term, definitely not. If it's 7 years or more, I might feel okay about it. And I know other note buyers that if there's they advise any note regardless, and they don't care about the SAFE Act, they don't think it applies, and they'll buy notes that have 7 to 10 year balloons, no problem. I'll have to see it in context of the rest of the transaction. I want to know what's the exit strategy for the balloon and how likely it is that that'll be able to happen. Do they have a reasonable ability to pay? I want to know, is this an easy payment for these people to make? I don't want to see that they're stretched thin so that at the slightest hiccup, they're having a tough time making ends meet. Okay. So that was a lot tonight. This is the end. Why notes, why now, and how. Class 505, we're done. Any questions, comments, concerns? I just want to thank you for being with me tonight and along in the class, and I wish you very, very well in your note buying adventures. I think everybody should be a note buyer in one way or form.